Pretty excited this week. I have sporting royalty in here, elite performance manager at the Australian Kangaroos, Troy Thompson. How are you, mate?
You're going really well, thanks, mate. How are you?
Let's talk sport.
Do it.
Welcome to the Body Science Podcast, bringing you everything you need, want and should know about health, fitness, nutrition and training. As always, the information contained in this podcast is for the information purposes only and is not designed to diagnose or be prescriptive to treat, prevent or manage any injury, disease or other health-related condition.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Whey Ultra, a 100% whey advanced performance protein designed for results. The ultimate in post-workout nutrition, Whey Ultra boasts a 4x whey protein matrix of peptides, isolates and concentrate, is loaded with BCAAs and EAAs, and is rapidly absorbed for maximum recovery and lean muscle growth. It's enhanced with prebiotics, probiotics and 5 digestive enzymes, plus is free from soy, gluten, added sugar, artificial flavours and sweeteners, and every batch is banned substance tested. Everything your body needs for recovery, nothing you don't.
Welcome to Body Science HQ, the land of fit, happy and healthy. And today I'm going to add to the end of that elite performance with me, Troy Thompson from the Australian Kangaroos. How are you, mate?
Going really well, thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Not a problem at all. Now, if you just want to know a little bit about Troy, he's been a busy boy. Couple of degrees, a Bachelor of Applied Science in Human Movements and some graduate diploma in exercise rehabilitation.
Yeah, that's right, mate. Yeah, so started off at the University of Queensland, mate, with way back in the day, exercise science or human movement studies.
Would have been a pretty empty room back then compared to what it is now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I spoke to my mum and dad about it. They said, what the hell are you doing there, mate? And I said, oh, well, it's this new idea. I was looking at physio and a few other opportunities for myself. So, yeah, we took up applied science degree and sort of thought, well, if that doesn't work out, I'll be able to use it as a basis to kick on to something else. But, it's all worked out really well for me, over the last couple of years. And then also, was able to do some exercise rehab postgraduate study down in Melbourne, my time down there.
Mate, it's quite a resume you've got here. I mean, obviously, you're sitting as the top dog as far as elite performance goes at the Kangaroos, which is probably a job that you'd be looking over your shoulder a fair bit at. So I'd say a few people want to have a crack at that one. But Storm, sports science coordinator, high performance manager at the Rebels, trainer high performance at State of Origin back in 2006. But we met you around 2010.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
High performance manager at the Mighty Bunnies, Pico.
Yeah.
So you got a little ring from that as well, I believe. You broke some big drought that they all talk about.
Yeah.
And then elite performance manager at the Australian Kangaroos.
Yeah, no, it's been a really fortunate journey, mate, to be honest. I've been really lucky, mate. And rugby league's given me so much and rugby union, to be honest. I had 12 months in a different sport, which was really great learning experience for myself. But I've just been really, really lucky, mate. I guess being in the right place at the right time. And the journey started way back in 99, and I did a internship there during my last year at uni with the Queensland Reds. So it was a pretty impressive side then too, the Timmy Horans and John Eales and those sort of guys. So
I've heard of those guys.
Yeah, they've done all right. And a couple of the players there sort of give you the hard time, but it was a bit of a welcome to elite sport. So it was really good fun. And off the back of that was turned up at Brisbane Norths, and there was a Colts team there that I was fortunate enough to just do a bit of speed work with. That's why I went down there to start off with, and a couple of players you might know of: Cameron Smith, Billy Slater, Cooper Cronk. I think Jake Webster was running around that team as well, so little was I to know back then that, they were going to kick on and have such great careers. But
amazing careers.
Yeah, again, it was, just I had pretty much no idea what I was doing at the time. It was just get in and sort of learn your trade. And fortunately, they were affiliated with the Melbourne Storm, so got a start down there, mate, and that sort of kicked it all off.
Mate, probably one of the things I want to touch on having you in today is not get too caught up in the science of sport, which you obviously can talk about. But an elite performance manager at the Australian Kangaroos is not just someone managing a team of 30 players. Like when you're telling me before the portfolio of what you're doing and what you're trying to grow for the sport, it's to be commended. Like I don't think a lot of people understand the depth of this role that you're in, and I think we should just have a little chat about it.
Yeah, I think it's a real credit to the NRL and Mal Meninga as a head of that, really, as our boss. Yeah, exactly right. And I think, they recognised in 2014 there was a pretty extensive review done there of where the Kangaroos sat in terms of the international calendar and the standing. We were number 2 at the time. So New Zealand had taken over as the number 1 rugby league team in the world, which, probably didn't sit really well with anybody.
Didn't sit well with me. I'm married to a Kiwi girl, but it still didn't sit well with me.
That's right, so I think it's, a real credit to the organisation to say let's really invest in the resources given to the Kangaroos program in particular, but also extending out to the Gillaroos and our junior Kangaroos and even as far down as our Australian schoolboys as well. So when Mel got the job, he rang me and asked me if I knew somebody that might be interested, and I was working at the Rabbitohs at the time, which again working with Michael Maguire and some really great people there, had some success, things were going really well, and just the opportunity, I guess, to try something new. was a big step for myself. And when I first took it, to be honest, everyone's like, that is the best job in the world. So you effectively look after 4 teams and they play a couple of times a year. How do I sign up for that? So as you said, it was really good. And again, I spoke with a few people, and Brian Canavan, as the former head of footy there, was really good for me. He sort of said, look, don't stress too much. It's going to take you sort of a fair bit of time to actually work out what the role entails and what you're going to do with it and how you're going to work it and come up with that job description, because it was a new role. And Mel had some visions around, really being a research and development arm of the NRL and being able to, I suppose, introduce and expose the players to not only some of the best practices that were already happening, but, how can we push forward and engage in, different modalities of training and recovery and all sorts of different areas. So it was a really exciting challenge as well. And then, as I touched on already, being able to then implement the same sort of programs with the Jillaroos. Those women athletes are just amazing,
And was that a real stop back, have a pop moment and think about that? Because you're talking a very different game for a very different type of athlete. I mean, men and women are not built the same, whether we like that or not, but they both got what an athlete needs.
Yeah.
So what did you guys actually have to
you're 100% right. And I think I actually presented to the Jillaroos just recently. We did some work with them, and I'm happy to talk about that at the back end of this podcast if you want. It was around some cognitive testing, and I remember, and I actually started that presentation with them to say, 3 years ago we sat in front of them and said, hey, listen, we're really excited that we want to expand the programs that we're doing with the men's into what you girls are doing as well. And it was at the start, it was like, well, how do we know the difference between there? And for myself, not having ever worked in that area, I was pretty oblivious to some of those differences. So it was some simple stuff, and it was the recovery, the supplementation, or the right proteins to have at the right times, and just some education. So really, it was some of the basics. So as I said, massage, the recovery processes, the right nutrition, those sort of pieces, which I thought were relevant to both men and women. And then we were fortunate enough that it grew exponentially and so fast that we were able to actually resource that program up a little bit more, and we started bringing in some people that had much more knowledge than me, and were able to sort of take the bull by the horns and run with some really specific women's research projects, and then that turns into practicality for them as well. So it's been a great evolution, and there's so many people involved in that Jillaroos and the NRLW programs that deserve so much credit for that. And again, for myself, it's more of a let's try and see what we can come up with and what's going to be beneficial to them, and then does that apply to that particular population.
And mate, from a hierarchical perspective of putting that together and culturally as well, was there a pool of qualified women to come in and take some of the roles that would traditionally go to the guys?
Yeah, I'm sure there is plenty of really well-trained female professionals in and around the training space. In terms of rugby league specifically, there probably wasn't that even 3 years ago. If I turn around and answer that from now, that's totally changed, and it's great to see,
exactly.
I think that's so good. And
we celebrate that, I reckon.
Yeah, 100%. With the 4 professional teams or semi-professional teams in the NRLW now emerging, and who knows what the future for that program looks like moving forward. But we've seen a great knock-on effect down through the pathways of that, so that the next level's down, and participation of the young girls is going gangbusters, which is great to see. So there's going to be these massive opportunities for those really highly skilled female professionals in a whole heap of different areas: strength and conditioning, scientists, nutritionists, all that sort of stuff, to really come to the fore and be leaders in the field with that particular population again.
Mate, that's exciting. And what about the youth program? How is rugby league developing young athletes these days, male or female?
Yeah, I think again, we've just done some recent work with the schoolboys, and I think if you talk to anybody in the schoolboys or the junior rugby league industry, everyone's known for a long time that they play a lot of footy. Yep. So those young kids play a lot of footy. So I think it's about educating that next wave of kids coming through, plus the school teachers involved with the schoolboys programs, and also the, let's call them, long-term athletic development type professionals that have real skill sets and have experience with that group of athletes. So it's, I guess, with the emergence of all the sports science over the last decade, the ability to monitor recovery, monitor workload has become really important, to actually sit down and say, well, we can objectively make decisions based on their workloads, their recoveries, and is that best for them? It may actually be that being younger athletes, they are able to tolerate a lot more load than, let's say, your your older athletes. But what concerns me is that these young kids at 17, 18 are 110 kilos.
Yeah, exactly.
Massive, can run very fast. And I stand up against them being 5 foot nothing, and they overshadow me quite easily. So again, there's a whole heap of work doing there, and it's great to see. You see the David Fafidas and the Nathan Clearys and these kids playing at really young ages now. So there's obviously something going really well there at the moment, but that still needs to be continued and improved upon moving forward.
And is the AFL talking with the NRL, talking with
in terms of their youth programs?
I apologise for saying that. In relation to like youth development and sharing science.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different theories and philosophies around that as well. And I think, yes, definitely we speak across the codes, because you'd be silly not to talk to them about their different aspects and the issues that they're facing. But I think, as rugby league, we're really unique in our skill set, plus also our physicality that's required there. I think each of those different organisations probably have a vision and a way to control that. And in terms of the government structure or the governmental or the governance sort of structure that they have, that very varies. So I suppose the influence and power that they can have on their pathway system probably varies across those competitions as well a little bit.
Okay. And the NRL is obviously working with a whole... I mean, if you've got youth programs, you've got women's programs, and you've got the NRL, which obviously is the pinnacle of everything. Are you working with the young S&C coaches these days? Are you spending a lot of time developing, our sports science base in Australia?
Yeah, and I mean, I've got a real passion for that, Greg. I think that, as I said, I sort of touched briefly on my role through, and I was able to be exposed to some great mentors, and I'll probably just expand a little bit more on that. So, I got a call down to Melbourne. So I was a 20-year-old kid working out at Brizzy North, doing a couple of days a week with their strength and conditioning. And then Mark Murray from the Storm rang me, and he rang me on a Monday morning. I just finished a gym shift, and I had my own personal training business at the time. So I was up at 4:30 in the morning going to the gym, and then doing the North stuff in the afternoon. So they were pretty big days, but I just thought, well, I'll just get in, and because everyone said you got to get out there, just give you hours and donate your time pretty much straight away. And Muppet rang me on a Monday and said, listen, I've got a job for you down here. He said, it's not really a strength and conditioning job or sports science, because that didn't exist back in 2001 really. Exactly. But he said, would you like to come down? It's a water boy, it's a strapper. And pretty much that was it. And I was like, well, yeah, that'd be awesome. And it was, he said, it's 30 grand and you get a car. And I was like, yeah, I was still living at home with mum and dad at the time. I'd never been to Melbourne in my life. And he said, you want to come down? And I said, yeah, when would you like me? And he said, Wednesday, we'll fly you down Wednesday. So this was Monday. So I said, just let me, give me a couple of hours. I'll make some calls and see what I could do. So I rang my current employers and sort of got there, and I was on a flight Wednesday morning, and then that Friday night I was running out on the field on an NRL game with against Parramatta at the old Colonial Stadium. So, and I was really, the reason I'll tell this is that then I was able to work with two really good people at that time that were at the Storm, and performance departments at the NRL back then were basically three of us, so which at the time was really good for me because we got to do everything. So I was sort of helping the physio treat, so he was teaching me a whole heap of different things from that point of view. The S&C coach was teaching me a whole heap of different things that I hadn't learned or was able to apply in a practical sense. And then I was applying my trade and sort of then really trying to start putting some sports science type processes in place there. But going through, I think I was really blessed that I got my time because I was able to just work whenever it needed to be done and give my time. And I think that's the biggest thing now, to spread my story to as many of those young S&C guys and girls out there, to say, listen, it is a hard road. You can't just come straight out of a university degree and walk straight into an elite team on $150,000 a year, sort of thing. So the more we can get those aspiring sports scientists, S&C coaches, even coaches out volunteering their time to the Intrust Super Cup level, Canterbury Cup level, or local clubs and things like that, that's where I think the sport can really benefit from having this great ability to look after the kids. And it really ties in well to that previous question where you were talking about what how's the youth development. Well, they need really good, well-trained, educated professionals to help them lift right and recover right and eat right and all that sort of stuff. So there is a massive opportunity, I think, moving forward. And as we spoke about before, the women's sports emerging, there's jobs that needed there because, again, they haven't had those years and years of experience. So we're seeing, even at the top level, some of the female rugby league players that still struggle with their movement patterns and how to lift and when to lift and how to recover. So to grow a community of young up and coming sports scientists, S&C coaches, is a real passion for me, and it's something that I know is going to help the game in general and really produce great athletes at the end of the day.
Mate, just for those young S&C guys that just heard your journey through Storm there, when you ran out, did you have a little chuck before you ran out? Did you trip? Did you go, shit, I hope I look good on camera?
The camera angles back in those days weren't probably as extensive as they are now. So I was just like, don't stuff up, don't do the wrong thing. So yeah, and they make you wear really, really good coloured shirts in yellow, bright orange and bright blue. So they do really good things for your figure. But yeah, like I was shitting myself, mate, to be honest. It was really cool. Like it was sort of what I suppose aspired to do. And as I said, I was really lucky, mate, that I got that opportunity quite early. I was only 22 at the time. As I said, I was still living at home with mum and dad. Fly down, and a week later, I'm running out at an NRL game. So really good story there. And Steve Kearney won't mind me telling this one, but he's got the world's biggest ankles, and so I was strapping his ankle before the game, and I was that nervous. My hand was shaking, and I was making sure I had no creases in the tape or anything like that. And apparently afterwards, he's just like looking at everybody else in this change shed, going, "What is this bloke doing? Why is he taking so long?" So he still gives me a hard time about that up until this day. But yeah, again, it was an amazing moment, and yeah, the first of many really good times I've had because of rugby league.
Mate, that's gold. Hey, can we touch on the structure of an NRL team, and the qualifications required at the certain levels? This is obviously a great podcast for those kids that are studying sports science in some way. If you can just, because there's a lot of new rules in relation to what's required post Essendon days, which none of us talk about.
Yeah, no, definitely there's been some real big changes in the last sort of 2 years or 18 months to 2 years with Sports Australia, formerly Australian Sports Commission, have sort of mandated all the national sporting organisations have a minimum standard in terms of their S&C and sports science staff. So there's always been, I suppose, a governing body that oversees the physios and the doctors and any nurses that are working within the elite sporting teams or the professional sporting teams. But while there has been the ASCAs and the S's with the accreditation piece for the sports scientists and the S&C guys, that hasn't been mandated as much from a government point of view, whereas those changes have now come in. So
is it 100% compliance or is it 80? What
no, look, it has to be 100% compliance. So, and again, there's a transition phase. So if you can imagine ESSA and ASCA trying to all of a sudden accredit all of these people to a certain level, and it's a real credit to the government and to both ASCA and ESSA to try and really expedite that process. So they've had not only rugby league teams, but there's AFL, soccer. So every national sporting organisation's having to go through this process. So they're working overtime there. Processing accreditation pieces, but in terms of an S&C, we require the S&C guys to be at a pro scheme level, so that's sort of the highest levels of ASCA accreditation that you can achieve, and with the ESSA it's level 1 and 2 sports scientists and high performance managers as well, which they've got a bit of a unique accreditation piece where people that are running performance units that are a more sports science background can have an accreditation at a different level to that level 1 and level 2 sports scientists. So it just really means there's some accountability for those members, those particular members of the staff that they're accountable for as well, and it just means that we've got, again, the best S&Cs, the best sports scientists working within the game and ensuring the safety and best outcome for the players. And I think for any of those PTs out there or anything else like that, there's no reason why they can't achieve those levels. It's just going through those processes and contacting ASCA and ESSA to make sure that you're ticking the right boxes to make yourself. So if you really want to have a shot these days, you need to have that as an absolute minimum. So if I'm sitting there as a head of performance and I'm looking at a resume, if those bits aren't ticked off, well, unfortunately, I've just got to go to the next resume. You know what I mean? So it's pretty clear cut, and I think it's a really good move for the sport.
Yeah, I think it's great for sport, mate. Just tapping on that a little bit more. Does that mean is there some type of database now that people put their name in and say they want to be like? If I'm a young guy who's gone through uni, I don't know a coach, I don't know this, and I mean, you look at the numbers in these courses now; they're through the roof, I'm told. So it's not like there's a job for everyone at the end of it.
Yeah.
So is there a place where people can put what they're doing that you as a elite performance manager and all the franchises around you, and then the next levels down, that people can go to look and see who's keen?
Not that I'm aware of, Greg. There may be, and you know what, I'd love to probably have a look at that. And if anyone is listening or can contact you or anything like that there is a register.
I'm going to put your phone number on later, mate. You'll be fine.
And my email address as well. Yeah, just not my home address.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I was just about to say the most effective way to do it is through contact. So, and where that starts is that volunteering. It's getting to know people, attending conferences, any sort of events that body science are at, or those sort of things. Just get along along, introduce yourself to as many people, pick up the phone, make a call. And as you said, mate, I've probably had 2 or 3 people that ring me and just say, oh, no, I reckon there's 1,000 people ringing it. Well, I actually don't get 1,000 people ringing me, and I'm quite happy to take a call. And, sometimes the answer is no, I don't have anything at the particular time, but you know somebody, or, as I said, start in this position and stuff like that. So it's networking. And I remember going through my uni years, everyone was like, you got to network. I was like, really? Do you have to do that? But now, sitting where I am now, I'm like, well, that was so right at that time. You just get out there and talk to people, and don't be afraid to, have conversations with different people, because you could be talking to the most experienced, most well-credentialed sort of person, but, they're probably going to be able to learn off you just as much as, you could learn off them as well. So there's absolutely no harm in talking to as many people as you can.
Mate, are the universities getting involved in sport with, running PhDs through a lot of the teams? And
yeah, that's I was going to say that's probably where things have changed a hell of a lot now. If you look at, we're talking about a performance unit back in the day consisting of, especially when you're just looking at the physical preparation and recovery of the players, 3 people to what they are now. You've got multiple S&C coaches, you've got a head of performance, you've got sports scientists, you've got probably 2 to 3 physios. This is in a rugby league team. And then you'll have a sports scientist, you'll have video analysts, you'll have all the coaches. So then to have PhD students that are actually able to come in, as you said, they've got a specific question they want to ask, and they generally sort of work with the club to come up with something that's beneficial to both. Most clubs now are running 2 or 3 of them. If not at least 1 or 2. You'd think, and it's a really good way, one, for those students that are aspire to work in professional sports to actually network, as we spoke about, understand what goes in, and it's all well and good to run research and everything like that, but then being able to translate into a practical sense, unless you've actually sat in there and lived it, it's quite often hard to to communicate that to the universities, to say, listen, this is great in theory, but how do we actually get that into a practical sense when you've got 30 guys that don't always want to do what you want them to do, and can't actually see the long-term benefit of something that they have to do short-term. So to answer your question, yeah, definitely the affiliations with the universities in recent years is really gone through the roof.
And mate, in your role as an elite performance manager, does that mean the dietitians are working under you as well?
Yeah, so again, we they don't necessarily work under me. Just I like to always
strategy.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think it's tapping into them again. Like the NRL last year has made it mandatory for all of the 16 NRL teams to have an accredited sports dietitian. Yeah. So again, it's and again, they haven't sort of said in what capacity or how much they have to, but they have to have them employed in some capacity. So whether that's part of their their supplement panel that they all have now.
Yeah, we used to deal with the S&C coaches in the early days. Now it's a dietitian.
And that's right. Yeah. And there's so much again the compliance processes that the performance departments have to go through these days is so extensive, which is a good thing, but it takes up so much time. So then to have people that are skilled in their particular area just makes your job so much easier. As you said, you sort of try to be a jack of all trade, whereas now the specificity of the individual knowledge is so much more applied, and it's better for everyone to be able to do that. So as you said, having those dietitians, and again, they work at each of the clubs, and in our role, we just get them at a point in time. So that's probably what takes up most of my time is liaising with each of those dietitians within the clubs to say, hey, listen, what do you take, and what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and working through from that.
Mate, can we touch on drugs in sport?
Yeah, 100%, mate.
How diligent is the NRL in relation to anti-doping policies and protocols?
Yeah, it's like, again, from a world standpoint, I'd say they'd be one of the strictest, in terms of the amount of drug testing that the players are exposed to through ASADA has just gone through the roof. Again, my career started back in 2002, and you might see them very rarely, and now it's, all the big games like the Origins, the Test matches, you've always got to have 1 or 2 players that are going to be tested there. The NRL's got its own illicit drug policy as well, which, again, has been in the media quite a lot, and, I think it's been pretty highly rated by a lot of experts in that field. So, yeah, it's definitely, the players are getting tested really, really often. So there's absolutely there's no point, I don't think, anymore, or there's no way that they're going to be able to to use any sort of banned substances in this day and age.
Yeah, I think it's great for the sport, actually. And that's the dietitians are running that part of the program in most clubs I'm dealing with.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
with the doc.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So each club now has a supplement panel that they have to then submit basically all of the list of products that they're using to the supplement advisory panel, which is a committee that's based within the NRL as part of the integrity unit there. So there's a couple of safeguard measures there, so that the clubs are sort of basically nominating the types of products they're using, which then goes to the supplement advisory panel, and that's all ticked off. So there's lots of ways to make sure that there's no errors as well, because quite often, you know, clubs are always looking for that advantage. They're looking for that 1%. We've probably heard, you've probably touched on that on many of your podcasts, 1%. You know, what's a 1%? Well, it might be a type of product that we're using that we actually think is really helping us. Yeah, it's a really good process, I think. It's tedious and it's difficult and it's hard work, but at the end of the day, it's going to keep the sport safe and it's going to keep the athletes safe. So having the dietitians on board, as I said before, with their sole focus being on that particular project and maintaining that across the course of the year, just takes some responsibility away and some workload away from your heads of performance or your S&C coaches, where they can just stay in their field a little bit and make sure they're nailing those sorts of things.
Mate, a lot of people obviously wouldn't think of vision and research when they talk about rugby league or NRL. Like you touched on it earlier with Mal wanting to create the Kangaroos into like a research sport. Mate, what type of vision? What's it like working with Mal, like as a human? And I mean, obviously that's not a loaded question, but
no.
He's one of the greatest players ever. I mean,
yeah, I know you can't see because it's a podcast, but I've got a grin from ear to ear because just an amazing human to work with. Super humble for what he's achieved in the game, but yeah, just always wanting the best for the players. You know, and that's what really comes through for me is his care for players and for the game. You know, he just wants what's best for that. And on that piece, you know, like trying to expose then the players, like something he speaks about to the players all the time is like wearing a Kangaroos jersey is the ultimate individual accolade. So, you know, it means that you are the best player in that position at that point in time. And so that's where the Kangaroos, I suppose, motto and culture is really grown from under his tutelage. And, you know, to be able to then reward those players with a unique experience is something that he really strives to achieve every time we get them together. And it's getting harder and harder to do because the NRL clubs and the personnel within those clubs are just amazing at the moment. And I'm blown away every time I go and visit a club with what they're doing and, you know, what they're exposing the players to. And I think, you know, from a worldwide point of view, and I'm happy to shout this from the rooftops, is I think, you know, we really lead sports science practices and research and innovation. And you know, I've been fortunate enough to be on a couple of different research and development tours to the UK and the US. And while they have some amazing facilities and some great practitioners, I'm certainly not taking away from anything over there. I think as a whole, we tend to employ a lot more sports science and research practices to look after our players. And I've been asked many times why that happens, and I think it's just because of the lack of depth that we've got here. If you compare it to the NFL, the responsibility around recovery and a lot of that is placed on the player, because if they don't turn up in good shape or if they break down, well, they're basically shipped off and we'll get the next one in, you know. I mean, we don't have a spare Cameron Smith sitting, you know, waiting to come at the moment. So I think our talent pool is probably not as big as overseas markets. So there's a real big emphasis on looking after those players that we have at the moment. So they all do that really well. Then they go to Origin, which steps up another level, and they get exposed to a whole heap of extra things. So then when they come and represent the Kangaroos, what can we try and do for them that gives them a unique experience and say, well, listen, I'm getting this because I am a Kangaroo. Like I get to represent my country, and this is what you get to expose to. So yeah, again, it's trying to find innovative ways to help not just their recovery, but help their preparation and their performance. You know, so and the big thing I'm conscious of, and I think it's a really good, I suppose, lesson for the young S&C coaches or sports scientists or any of the practitioners out there is don't just do something for the sake of doing it. Like you don't want to be just rolling out something just for the sake of doing it. What can you actually action off the back of it, and how can that help that player? And I've been caught out myself in times where I've done things that I actually thought were going to be beneficial and probably hasn't worked out, or you know, results take longer to come back. So then by the time you actually get to action it, you don't have the players anymore because they've gone back to their clubs. So it's a bit of a trial and error from that point of view. But it's a really exciting part of my role. And again, you know, with the players that we're exposed to, again, we're really lucky that we get to work with the best of the best. And I'll tell a story about, you know, the World Cup in 2017 there, where we employed or engaged a heat management specialist. So it was a gentleman based in Darwin who works with first responders and miners up there, really dealing with the extreme heats they had. Okay. And we had a semi-final up there, or quarterfinal it was, sorry. And we knew it was going to be really hot, so we sort of worked really closely with him about how can we manage this heat and what's the best way about the whole week, not just the game or that performance. How do we look at the whole week? We tried some pre-cooling methods. So something as simple as getting some kiddie wading pools. We tried 3 different sort of temperatures of water. So it wasn't ice cold. It was just, it was sort of around about the 18, 19, 20 sort of degree mark. So it wasn't super cold or anything like that. But getting the players to lie in there, making sure their legs weren't in there. So we didn't want to cool the legs, but we wanted to cool just a cool body. And we had players there that we've played 40-odd tests and heaps of NRL games that actually tried that, and we were able to then use that in the semi-final and the final, and then they took it back to the clubs and said, hey, listen, I tried this. So it's great to see, those players that have done so much in their career already, they're just trying that one extra thing here. Yeah. And they're not going to use it all the time, but in times where they're playing in a really hot environment, they've had that experience and they've exposed it. And then I'm happy to, again, share that with all the performance managers and just say, hey, listen, we tried this and this is what we did, and give it back. Because we want to reward the clubs for producing Kangaroos players as well. Exactly, so we really try and, as I said, roll out programs or methods that we can share with everybody else, and hopefully they can get the benefits of it as well.
And mate, that's obviously a player safety concept you're talking about there. What other really innovative player safety concepts have come into the game recently?
I mean,
from your side, not from on field.
Yeah, I was going to say, So player safety,
like is the exchange rules and all that type of thing. Is that all part of what you guys come back with science?
Yeah, we comment on that. Probably part of my other role with the NRL around the workload and balance committee, and working really closely with the Players Association, just around the time off that the players have. So what is the optimal time off, but then also what's the optimal time of preparing the players as well. So there's an ongoing, it's not a tug of war, but there's a difference of opinions there, where some players are saying, well, we need lots more time off. Performance guys are saying, well, hang on, we need some time to prepare them as well. So it's trying to find that balance, and I think we've got to a point, we've got a really good working relationship with as the NRL. If I put my NRL cap on, with the Players Association, and we're rolling out some really nice research about that at the moment, which we can have a look at what does the whole calendar look like. So it's not necessarily so much about the number of games the boys are playing or things like that, but just what does the whole year look like, and what's the optimal and the ideal piece, and we're never going to come up with an exact number. There's going to be plus or minus weeks or games or whatever it is. So there's never going to be, but the fact that that's been spoken about from a scientific point of view is really good, and that's why we need research for that. And sometimes that's GPS data. So what are the numbers that are coming out now? So as I said, like I started running GPS units, like we had 5 of the world's biggest GPS units that we stuck on players at the Melbourne Storm back in 2006. And what the clubs are doing now at Clubland is astronomical. Like, it's just unbelievable. The metrics they're using to train, how they're utilising it. It's on every player for every session, every game now. Like the last of the players that probably didn't wear GPS is just retired last year. So there was guys there, and I won't name him, but he wouldn't mind it. But he had a really bad game at Leichhardt one time, because it was one of the first time he wore a GPS, so it came off at half time and he never wore it again, and that was about that would have been about 13 years ago. But that sort of old school mentality is sort of gone now, and it's probably flipped, to be honest, whereas players come to you now and almost say, well, where's my GPS unit? So we're starting to gain all of this insight from a real objective scientific point of view, which it can actually help shape what the game looks like. And there's a competitions committee that deal with all of the interchange pieces and all that, but they use science that's collected from a whole heap of different people and methods to make those decisions. And I think the more science and objective measures you've got there, the better you can make those decisions.
I remember back in the early days when we were making compression garments, they started getting us to put pockets in the back of the shirts for the GPSs, and I'm sitting there looking at one going, I would not want that on my back if I'm running out of football field back in those early days.
They're a lot smaller now than what they were. So
crazy.
But it's crazy, yeah.
Mate, it's interesting you talk about GPSs, because we had Nathan Walker on, who plays for the NHL, with the hockey league in the US, and he was saying that there's no GPS in their sport because the athletes don't want the coaches to know their performance. I mean, obviously they got a different contractual basis that they can just be dropped tomorrow on another club the day after, and then 4 weeks at another club later.
Yeah.
But and that's an interesting point on all this data that's being collated is for the betterment of science. Obviously, I'm sure you've had some chats about who owns data, and
it's a massive one, isn't it? Really, and again, I'm probably not in a place to talk about that too much.
I get that, but
it's a really relevant question, because with the recent CBA, with the NRL and the Players Association, they sort of come to an arrangement of where that sits and how it's utilised. And again, it's just having those conversations about how is it going to get utilised. So, because you can certainly see the players' view of it, and you can see where the science behind it can actually help with some of those decisions and things like that. So it's always a bit of a tricky one to sort of negotiate. But again, we got to look at ways that it can be used that excites people as well. You know, like it's, you know, fans out there to know what these guys are doing.
Absolutely,
you know, like it's blokes like Josh Addo-Carr and Cookie and those blokes, mate. Wow, how fast are they? And, you know, that's a celebration of our game. You know, so but we want to make sure it's exposed in a positive light as well. We don't want we want that data used in a negative way or ways that's going to affect players.
I wasn't actually going to head down that path. Sorry, I was more talking about the advancement of Australian sport and what we're doing and
I think
playing that, and even the athletes too. Like you said, the athletes, where's my GPS data?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's really good when people look at data and look for improvement.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's probably a really good time to touch on this. You know, some of the other innovation we're sort of looking at now is looking at the cognitive space. So everybody here that's going to listen to this will have a fair understanding of everything from the neck down. So we talk about neck down or shoulders down. What are we doing shoulders up or neck up? You know what I mean? What's going on in your brain? And I just don't think that's been tapped anywhere near as much as it could be. And there's been a massive trend, and which is great, you know, around identifying, you know, mental health issues, the level of anxiety, depression, all that sort of stuff, and some really great innovative ways to potentially counter that with, you know, we talk about our mindfulness and meditation and all those sort of things, which is great. And that's a really big part of from a performance perspective. But if we look at the cognitive side of things in general, like what are we doing there to help that? And I think that's probably something that's really emerging for me as that's probably going to be the next big space. You know, what can we do there? And it's really hard to, what I've found in my experience with this so far is that's really hard to show improvements to a player and to a coach and even to an administration. So you're gonna ask the CEO or the financial controller for some cash, and they're going, well, what are you going to do? You go, I'm going to stick this thing on top of this bloke's head and it's going to make him play better. And they're like, what are you talking about? But if you stick him in the gym and say, listen, do 100 push-ups and you know, do some bicep curls, you'll see some difference. Your biceps get bigger when you're doing a bicep curl. You know what I mean? So they're really observable changes. Whereas with the cognitive or the neuro side of things, that becomes a little bit more blurry in terms of actually being able to show those results and how do you measure that. So there's new emerging technologies which is actually able to objectify some of that that information. You know, there's companies that we've utilised that actually have a skull cap. You stick something on and it's looking at real-time brain waves. So it's called an EEG. So you're looking at what's going on in an athlete's head, and then you can be able to compare them to different populations, military, you know, males versus females, all that sort of stuff. So you think about a baseline measure now that you go in, or your vital signs with, you know, you go into the GP and they take your blood pressure, they take your heart rate, they take your body temperature, all those sort of things. So they're your vital signs, but there's potentially vital signs around your brain, like what's your attention like, what's your memory like, what's your visual processing or your spatial processing like, and then also reaction times and how accurate you are. All of those things are so relevant to sports and elite athletes that if you can test them, implement a program that could improve them, and then retest them, that's the way we're going to be able to show those changes. That's amazing. There's plenty of things out there, but as I said, it's been able to show those results and how they've improved.
Clapping you guys in on that one, that's a big one. I mean, at least we're talking about it. You know, that's a big thing. In sport is to talk about it. So.
Yeah, and again, that's sort of aside to, you know, the concussion stuff, which I think, you know,
you're probably not allowed to talk about that right now.
No. I won't say too much about that. But all I can say again, you know, from my experience there, like the processes that the NRL put in, again, have to be commended. You know, I've been part of the era where it was difficult to remove a player from the field of play because of a head knock, whereas now it's, you know, with the support that, and I don't get to wear the really cool orange shirt much anymore, but you know,
I've got one downstairs if you want one. Probably one of your old ones.
But we don't, you know, we're getting so much support from the chief medical officer who's always staying up to date with the latest processes and everything like that. So I think that piece is been really well looked after, in my opinion, you know, and there's always ways to improve it and things like that. But this stuff is just more about how well is your brain working and what's going on. Like again, a vision for me, like how good would it be? I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, they had the Telstra tracker, the GPS and the heart rate on JT when he was taking that goal kick in the Origin. So, but imagine if we could have a look at what was going through his brain, like what's he thinking about during that time, you know, and who knows what it's going to be like, the technology is going to be like in 10 years time to say, imagine just sitting there going, wow, that's what his brain activity is doing. And what does that mean to the punter sitting at home? It's some pretty cool stuff, you know.
That's cool. You guys be giving esports a run for their money, Ben, when that type of thing's going on.
That's it, yeah.
Mate, any final words for anyone that wants to know the Troy Thompson story?
Yeah, I love meeting people and listening to a whole heap of different. As I said there, I had 12 months in rugby union. You know, again, for me, we went through a pretty tough time at the Storm. I was there when we went through the salary cap stuff, and so that ended 2010. So I was there from 2001 through to 2010. 10. And, you know, so for me to leave, that was an opportunity to be a head of performance at rugby union. And it probably didn't work out for me as the way I wanted it to. And I moved there. But I tell you what, I learned a lot during that year as well. So I think whatever situation you find yourself in, just try and find a way to learn something from it. And it mightn't seem like it's good at the time, or, you know, you're not actually learning. I think there's always opportunities to learn. And so I just love talking to people about a whole heap of different ranges, a whole different range of topics, whatever it may be. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that I don't think you're ever going to know it all. And I'm a long way from knowing everything, you know. And yeah, I've just been really lucky to be involved in the sports. And I guess the biggest thing is just be a good person, mate. You know, like no matter what you do, and you can always learn stuff, and you don't have to walk into a room and be the smartest dude in the room. Just I
don't suffer from that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So that's about it, mate. Really.
Mate, that's legendary. So if people want to check you out, you got an Instagram account?
I do have an Instagram account. It's probably
not private or not.
No, it's private. It's open. It's just probably not really that exciting. It's got more of some of those.
You watch the DMs come in now.
Oh, it's got some more of those, camping type photos and stuff like that. So it's. I don't even know.
I've got to
grab my phone.
See, busy people don't need Instagram. There's a lesson for all you young
I've never gone down the road of Facebook. I've never got onto Facebook, but I don't mind Instagram, more so to see what else is going on. But so it's Molly Tom. I think I've put it down as. Yeah, there we go. So Molly Tom, MOLLI_THOM. Now the reason for that, my middle name is Mollison, so I've been given a lot of stick during my time, but I'm happy to share that with it. It's a Scottish name, and there's a bit of background there. So I sort of wanted to. I wanted to be a little bit discreet, but still, you know, the people that need to find me can find me. So, yeah, like you said, mate, jump on if someone wants to do that, or DM me. And does that mean direct message?
It does. Right? Nice work. Hey,
I'm more than happy.
Be an influencer before you know
it. Try to help as much as I can, mate. But that's me in a nutshell, mate.
Well, mate, we've loved working with you over the years, and I can't thank you enough for coming on board and sharing your story.
No, mate, it's great, and you guys have been fantastic for all the teams I've been involved with. And probably something we didn't touch on was just, you know, the ability with the teams that we've got and I suppose the assets we're dealing with, to know that we've got really safe products that we can use and roll out when we need to. It makes my job a hell of a lot easier. So I can't thank you guys enough for that either.
I appreciate it. All good.
Cheers.
Thanks. Today's podcast was brought to you by our partners in Fit, Happy and Healthy, ASN, Nutrition Warehouse, DY Discount Vitamins, Fat Burners Only, Evelyn Faye, Mr. Supplement, or find a retailer online at bodyscience.com.au/retailers.